come out for your votes. Now we'll turn time over to Matt. He can tell us a little bit how his operation runs and how he stays sane.
Good afternoon. Now I can say it's nice to see some familiar faces in the crowd. And but once again, thanks for the time. So it's been a real pleasure to be here. There's a great group of folks for the ones that I've gotten to meet, for the folks that have taken time to have some conversations in the hallway. Thanks for that. So it's been you guys are lucky here in Utah. I have a great group of beekeepers, and we're doing some great things. So thanks again for letting me be part of this. I think that as I mentioned this morning, I sort of enjoy the dialogue a little bit more than the monologue. So if there's any questions, kind of feel free to ask. I think this is titled "A Day in the Life," but I think sort of what I've prepared is more of my philosophy, if you will, for Sweet River Company, which is the name of our beekeeping operation, if you will, the name of our bee farm, as some people would say. So just real quick, it is a little bit of a personal indulgence, so forgive me for this, but the picture up there is the Halbegachws family seal from the mid-1400s. And I was kind of intrigued, and probably something that drove me to get into beekeeping from the high-tech industry several years ago, was that we're sort of this family that had been keeping bees since the 1400s. More recently, 3 generations. My grandfather made his living keeping bees, but the family seal has some bee skeps on there, and I guess was presumed to be a beekeeper holding some flowers. So I thought, oh man, it's been around that long. It'd be a shame for my generation to come along and nobody else in the Halbegachws family, at least in the United States, and beekeeping bees. So I kind of display it here because my wife has a specific aversion somehow to the colors or something, and so we don't really get to display it in the house or on the trucks or on any of our stationery. So okay, I think it's interesting, and here I have a forum, so I'm just going to display it. Anyway, kind of enough of that. Let's see here. I think the other thing is on the agenda or the schedule, it said a day in the life of a very busy guy. So I think probably we're all very busy. I don't know if anybody in this room doesn't have a very busy life. Raise your hand, I suppose. But assuming that everybody does, whether it's just beekeeping or another job or raising your families or whatever the case may be, we're busy. And so again, that's why I kind of thought, hey, let's see if we can have more of a conversation about beekeeping, and I'll kind of leave that off. I just have really 2 slides. We can go to the next slide here, and the first slide is sort of my goals or my guiding principles for the organization. The second slide are 4 or 5 sort of I call them SOPs or standard operating procedures. So the 2 slides together are really about how I guide, what guides me in making decisions for Sweet River Company. So I think the first one here, I say reducing inputs to maximize outputs. So these things are all sort of so simple, I think, and that can really be boiled down to how do we actually make a profit, right? And I think that before I got into beekeeping, when I was consulting with Fortune 500 businesses in the area of information security, it's something that applies sort of in any industry, right? And so these are some of the things that I came up with. But how do we make more with less? How do we increase our profit margins? But it's especially in this period of inflation, I think it's helpful principle to apply when I have to make decisions about like which expenditures do I keep, which ones do I cut, and which ones do I even increase. And so I'm not going to sit here and say really which ones are right for all of you, because I think it's a different answer. But I think sort of what's important, at least for me, and the way I found what works for us, is to ask yourself that in your operation. And again, whether you have 2 hives or 5 or 5,000, I think these principles are some that I found to be helpful. The second principle is to bottle both my personal and my business risk tolerance, right? So some of us have a higher threshold of pain or risk than others do. And I think as the leader of your business or as the leader of your bee colonies, right, you need to understand what your level of risk is. So if your definition of success is to sort of not have to buy any new bees, then as you model, say trying new things or taking risk and doing something a different way in order to see if it works, then you're guided by the fact that you understand that your goal is to not have to replace your bees. And so you sort of make sure that your studies or your experiments are not going to cause you to have to purchase bees or to have to go against what your definition of success is. So I think the next one is make outcomes more predictable. So how do we do that in an industry where almost all of our inputs are things that we don't control, right? The weather, as much as I always tell people, as much as I would like to control the weather, I'm really glad I don't, because I would probably mess it up too. And so somebody mentioned that, I think when Mike was doing his presentation about the drought insurance, do you pray for rain or pray for not to rain? So we don't know. But we're in sort of this business where we have this diversion or uncontrollable inputs, but there are things that we can control. And I think as we make decisions every day, whether it's about our bees, about our employees who we're selling to, that kind of thing, I think that guiding some of those decisions by saying, how do I make my outcomes more predictable, is important. And again, I recognize we're talking in generalities here, but I want to be careful that I don't apply, exactly what I do is not what's right necessarily for anybody else. And so that's one of the sort of the third thing that I try to think about. The fourth principle is to identify necessary contingency plans and define them. So I was maybe mentioning to the table when we were eating lunch earlier, like, what if I run out of money? What if all my employees are gone tomorrow? What if I show up and I only have, one hive surviving for some reason? Or what if there's a weather event that
You have to buy a new truck.
Yeah. What if you got to buy a new truck? And these days you can't even, go down to the lot and buy one if you got the money to do it. And so identifying those contingency plans, I think are really important. At least knowing which ones I need helps me to relax and helps me not to help my blood pressure not to go up whenever I get that surprise phone call. But knowing that, maybe somebody had a wreck, maybe a load of bees tipped over, if I can understand how I'm going to move forward, I'm able to sort of work through those surprises a lot more predictably. And so the fifth one is a little bit of a soapbox for me. I say, know your customer. So your customer is maybe it's who you sell honey to, maybe it's who you sell nukes to. Maybe you view your customer as your honeybees. In my case, my customer are the almond orchard owners that I send bees for pollination to, and my customer is the honey packer that I sell honey to. But I think I take it one step further, and that is ultimately the consumer of honey is all of our customer. And so understanding how that consumer makes a decision, understanding what they really want out of a honey product, that's something which benefits our industry as a whole. So know your customer individually and know your customer from the industry perspective. Yes.
Could you just briefly describe how you feel about each of those 5 items? How do they fit you?
Yeah, I can try that. If let's see, if we go back here, maybe and you can put them back on the screen. Maybe I can describe some things anecdotally in that, and let's see if that's helpful to you. The question was whether or not I could describe what these sort of 5 principles mean to me at Sweet River. And so I'll just kind of go through them. The first one, reduce inputs and maximize output. So when I purchased the first business that started Sweet River Company, not a nicer guy in the bee industry. He had been keeping bees for 60 years, but here all of a sudden we had this business, and everything was failing in the business, right? All of the woodenware was rotten. The bees were full of mites. I mean, there were a lot of uphill battles. Part of them were because I didn't know, kind of what I was purchasing, and part of it was just because when you get to a certain point in your career, the guy that I bought out was for like 10 years, he had been totally maximizing his investment, and he had made zero investment into sort of the ongoings of his business and replacing the equipment. So we had some decisions to make, right, with limited budgets. Where do we spend money? And so I think that one of the decisions that we made was, in a large operation, it took forever to move our bees. The forklifts were old. Out of 4 forklifts, you only ever had 1 working. The trucks were always breaking down. We ran small trucks. We were spending insane amounts of money on fuel and labor just to make, multiple trips to bee yards and to transport bees. And so, here we were with a lot of, kind of rotten woodenware, but we decided, hey, you know what? The bees don't really care if the paint's peeling off the boxes and if there's a couple of extra entrances. So we actually made the decision that we needed to get some dependable forklifts and trucks, and that was what was right for our business. So that's sort of one example. I think another one there is, and again, these things are what was right for us. I don't think it's necessarily what's right for everybody. We're making nukes in a very traditional way every spring. We make the nukes up. We would go back through. We would equalize them. If a queen didn't take, we would get a queen, and we would put fix up the poor nuke. We would sort of cannibalize the great nukes for fixing up the poor nukes, and we're going around doing this, and finally it was kind of like, hey, what's our return for this? And so we took a group of bees where we were doing it the traditional way, and we took a group of bees where we just made up the nukes and then ignored them for the rest of the year, except for making honey on them, that kind of thing. We sort of track things like, what's the survival rate, and how many are going to California the following season. And what we discovered was there's only 1 or 2% difference in the number that went to California. There was almost no difference in the amount of honey produced from a yard that had the bees where the nukes had all, we had done checkbacks on all the nukes and supposedly fixed them all up versus a yard that had, a set of hives that, where the nukes had not been checked back on. So in other words, we found out that we were putting a whole lot of input into this one set of bees and much less input into the other set of bees. And yet we were having basically the same output. And so for our operation, it's not to say, maybe we were putting the queens in wrong. Maybe the guys checking back on the nukes didn't really know what they were doing or didn't know what they were looking for. Maybe it was all user error, but nevertheless, for our operation, with our employees, the way that we ran things, that was a big win for us. So maybe those two examples kind of help there. Model my risk tolerance. I think a good example here is maybe that, and again, I know that this may not apply to everybody, so I apologize, but again, the question was what works for us here at Sweet River. So risk tolerance as an example is when we send bees to California. So we sort of made the decision early on that we would look for contracts for different grades of bee colonies. And we would try to be very, very specific in providing, those bees that the grower was paying for. In other words, some people would tell me, oh yeah, you just put three good colonies on and 1 bad colony, and then you get paid for all 4 of them, and that's okay. So that really stressed me out. I didn't like that. I didn't like getting a call and saying, oh yeah, your bees are getting inspected today. And I thought, oh man, what if they look at the wrong pallet? And so we just made the decision, anything that's bad, let's keep it in Texas. And that way I kind of get to relax during almond season. I put the bees in and I'm pretty certain of how they're going to grade out. I invite the inspectors in there. I want the inspectors to be there because I want us to be able to be transparent with the growers. So that's sort of an example of what I would say modeling my risk tolerance. I think that example could also apply for make outcomes more predictable. Another example is has worked for us sort of to make outcomes more predictable is, the honey price has been fluctuating quite a bit. And so we worked really hard on establishing good relationships with the packers. We tried to have a diverse group of packers, so small packers where we could sell 1 or 2 loads, some big packers where we could sell, say, 10 loads or 15 loads of honey. And then I really worked with them. So I would go in and I would say, hey, look, I may be asking for an extra nickel a pound on my honey, but give me a call. I'll go visit a customer with you. I will help promote, your packing company. I really want to partner with you to hopefully be able to raise your prices on the shelf so that we can, hopefully get a premium for our honey when we sell it to you. And so that's an example of making our outcomes more predictable. We even did some things like, came up, most of these were all handshake agreements, but like, hey, honey prices are really depressed, but, pay us 10% over market this year, prices go up next year, you pay us 10% under market next year. Just evening out sort of our revenue was a good thing for our business. Making those outcomes more predictable allowed me to sort of be at the bank and to say, hey, look, I kind of know that my price isn't going to fluctuate much over the next couple of years. We have production records that allow me to do some things that I wouldn't have been able to do without that. Let's see. So is this helpful to answering your question, or should we? It's okay. Okay.
We like the stories.
You like? Well, that's the only way I know how to talk. So identify and define contingency plans. So our business, I consider us a family business, but yet my wife is actually deathly allergic to bees. I mean, she one sting and she's definitely going to be in the hospital for a while. She has it's anaphylactic reaction. It's not that her throat closes, it's that her heart stops. So it's extremely dangerous. Obviously, she doesn't work in the bees. I think that too, because I sort of approached this, I thought when I first started Sweet River that I was gonna sort of run it alongside my other work, but it became bigger than that. But the way in which I tried to set up the structure of employees and the management structure was that we had sort of these managers and team leaders, and we tried to have a company philosophy, and we tried to sort of put in place some process and procedures that again made it more predictable, but that would also give us the opportunity to then identify some contingency plans. So part of that is what happens to me, right? I'm talking to my manager every day. He can kind of know what to do. But if I, walk to get something to eat and not get hit by a bus, he needs to know what he's gonna do over the next few days. My wife, needs to know how to talk to our we have, actually full-time help in our back office that sort of takes care of that paperwork, which I hate, and which I kind of to try to avoid it and realize there's way more of it than I ever wanted to do in my previous job. But anyway, so our contingency plans are what happens if something happens to me? What happens if something happens to my foreman, Alonzo? What happens if I run out of money? I need to make sure that I have, types of plans in place if all of my bees die, right, and I need to go replenish my bee supply. So those are what has to do with personnel. It has to do with our financial planning, and those are the two main items. So knowing my customer, I think I probably already talked some about that. That has to do with trying to find out what was important to the packers, so I wasn't just some other guy that they got honey from and they negotiated the cheapest price with for that particular year. But then I think taking it a step farther, when I went and talked to that packer, I said, I want to talk to your customer, and not only that, I want to talk to your customer's customer. So I want to talk to my customer, the packer. I want to talk to my customer's customer, which is the grocery store, and I want to talk to my customer's customer's customer, which is you and I eating the honey, and understand. I learned some kind of things that may or may not have an impact on my business, like this whole group of consumers that said, I love honey, but I just refuse to put up with this. My sticky countertops are getting my hands sticky when I want to put it in my coffee. And I was like, really? Like you can't go wash your hands? But there's a big group of consumers out there that wouldn't buy honey because they felt like the packaging wasn't adequate for keeping their hands from getting sticky. So together, like with the packer, we kind of learned that, and we said, well, how, is there a way that we can fix that? Might be, I don't know, are we out of time now? So once again, I think our standard operating procedures are probably so glaringly simple and boring. But once again, I think that's one of the things that I hope that we can boil our business down to, are some things that are quite simple. And so I think hopefully these are the things that are sort of be pillars of everyone's bee business. Otherwise, your bees will probably survive for very long. So mites and medicine, right? If you don't pay attention to the mites, then you won't be in business very long. I sort of quit because when I first got into bees, I kind of went from 0 to 4,000 with the stroke of a pen. And I said, mites are a big problem. I think I could hire somebody for, pay them $80,000 a year or $100,000 a year and just tell them, only keep track of mites. Well, I didn't do that, even if I wanted to, I couldn't find anybody that would actually keep track of it, they would have just gone and cashed their paycheck and gone to the bar or something, so. Anyway, so I thought, well, we're gonna test for mites all the time, and despite doing all of that, like my naivety, 2 years into it, we probably lost 65% of our colonies to primarily because of poor beekeeping on my part and on the part of all of us at Sweet River. And so, that was sort of a trial or something that we had to go through. But now I think we have a little bit better handle on how we treat for mites. Again, it's not revolutionary. We primarily use Apovar, which everybody knows is an amateurized-based treatment. We also use brood breaks. So a lot of migratory beekeepers, as an example. So we go from Texas to North Dakota. A lot of people are really in a hurry to get out of North Dakota and either go to the sheds or maybe they go south and then treat their bees there. So we specifically leave our bees in North Dakota long enough to where it's cold and they're not brooding. And then we're able to get much more effective treatment of the mites. We also try, once they get to Texas, we try to really motivate them. We get some fresh bees in the hive, and then we try to force actually another brood break right before California, so that colony can kind of be, I think they recognize the spring, and something I was talking to Sam about earlier in the hallway, they sort of have this fake spring in November in Texas, and we want them to be thinking it's spring again kind of in California, so that they're wanting to be active and to grow.
Are you accompanied with brood breaks with oxalic acid treatments or just brood breaks?
So we've done yes and no. We've used some oxalic acid. We've used formic acid. We do use those things from time to time. For us in our operation, we feel like that all of the scientists tell us that we need to rotate medicines, and so we try to, but it always seems like that we end up having to put Apovar in there anyway, because we're not getting, our mite levels as low as we want them to be. And so, I think if a scientist were probably to evaluate what we're doing, we would get a very poor grade. But that said, we do have our loss levels to a number that's quite manageable for us, in the 30-some% range. So that's what kind of works. So the next thing is nutrition, and again, nothing here except for, again, anecdotally, I sort of thought about it, especially in some of those years after we had to replace all of our colonies. And so then I was trying to make decisions on inputs, and one of those things that I thought, well, maybe we could spend less on feed or nutrition, or maybe we feed them this instead of that because it's a little cheaper. And I think, something that somebody told me that I, now sort of incorporate as a principle for us is they say, well, hey, look, if you're on a diet of gummy worms for a year, you're probably going to survive as long as you have some water. You can sit on the couch and you can do something, but you're probably not going to be able to really effectively go work your bees every day. And so it's like, okay, yeah, nutrition is really important, right? If they're going to fight all of these environmental stressors, and there's more and more and unknown stressors that bees are going to have to deal with every day, then we better try to give them the best nutrition that money can buy. And so, so we give them pollen patties, and we feed fructose in the fall. We feed sucrose every time we want them to start breeding. We feed them sucrose when we're trying just to get them to fill up the colony and kind of force that brood break. That's when we use the fructose. I think pollen patties, there are definitely some that are better than others. I don't know that I want to, can sit up here and really evaluate from any really solid data perspective which ones are best, but try some and find what works for you, or talk to some scientists that actually do the studies and where you can have a little bit more confidence in that decision. But definitely, I feel like feeding them those those proteins is extremely important. We're lucky enough, a lot of people ask us, why don't you go to the sheds? I think we're lucky enough that where we are in Texas, we get some natural forage, so we try to depend on that as much as we can as well, and only supplement as necessary. So I believe in some of the other supplements as well, like I don't know, whatever Honeybee Healthy or Man Lakes product is Pro Health. We mix that for various reasons into our fructose and sucrose that we use. Partly just so if we end up not using it because we can't end up on a flow in Texas, then that, then we don't end up with a tank full of solid, solid feed that we can't use. But anyway, that's that. Equipment rotation. So our equipment is still pretty old. We still have lots of boxes that have multiple entrances, like rotten corners and stuff like that. But we are in an equipment rotation, particularly, so we've actually prioritized rotation of our frames, of our cone over the rotation of our boxes. And so we try to do at least 15% a year, but 20% if we can, we're rotating our cone.
Are you just disposing of that, or are you selling some of that off the combination?
So I think no is sort of disposing of it mostly, but we sort of dispose of it by accident because again, we've got all of this equipment that's so old that we sort of, we could very easily, if not even being very picky at all, we could throw that much away every year, right? Whether it's a broken ear or hole in the comb or, whatever, 5 pallets get left in Texas because it's not worth the whole truck to take to North Dakota. They all get waxed off and you burn them the next year. So cleanliness is the next thing. I think that we require. I guess it's kind of sad that we have to require this, but our guys have to wash their pieces at least twice a week. We prefer that they do it every night. We have laundry facilities at every location. It's like if it can stand in a corner by itself without a hanger, then obviously you didn't wash it 2 days ago. So also, you don't really want to ride in a truck with a guy like that either. So, but I do think that's important, right? We don't know. We try to keep our bees healthy. We hope that they're not coming across diseased hives, but obviously if they are, the idea is to limit where that's getting spread to. And so likewise, the hive tools got to be cleaned between every yard. We've done some different things like, take a bucket of alcohol, make them dip it in there, make them burn it in the smoker, and then, scrub it in the dirt or something. I mean, it was, all kinds of things, but what we require all of our team leaders to do is to actually document that everything's been cleaned between every yard, because I just feel like that's important and something that we can control for a very small cost. I guess the last thing I'll say is that queen, so we try to requeen every year. We use queen cells. We've done both. We've used live queens and queen cells for us in our operation. Queen cells seem to work the best. I think something that I'll note here as well is that we have used many queen breeders, and I think there's a lot of queen. I don't know if somebody's making queen cells. I don't know if you call that a queen breeder. I guess you do. They're just selling them before they're queens. But anyway, we try to have a diversity in our genetics. So once again, I feel like if we're sort of a commercial operation and we're running for numbers, then obviously I would like for my bees to be somewhat predictable. So like I feel like that when I tried Russian bees that they weren't very predictable, so I don't use Russians anymore. But we do have a diversity in stock. We get them like 4 or 5 different kinds of stock that we get from one breeder in Florida and from a breeder in Texas. It's primarily the Minnesota hygienic queen cells. And so that's what works for us. But again, we have to requeen every year from time to time. There might be a group of hives where we decide, hey, let's make some honey as an example, instead of requeen these hives or instead of busting them up. And it never fails. By the time it's, we're going to almonds the next year, you're 60% of those are not making great. And it's not because they're diseased, it's because the queens fail and she's turning into a drone layer. She's, anyway, obviously her wings are tattered and torn, she's done.
Can you describe how you requeen?
Oh man, that's very, very non-technical. Yeah, we split everything up. Everything becomes a nuke and everything gets a cell. That's it.
You just mentioned your existing.
Nope. Don't leave them. Some of them survive, but if they survive, I think they're very strong. So.
What do you do with the old queen? You look for her?
Nope. We don't look for them. I think, I don't know, somebody could maybe speak up and give an idea of maybe somebody's done a study or, on their own hives or more broadly to know what their survival rate would be. I think we used to make nukes where we would, pull the brood up over an excluder and then come back and pick the nuke off. And we even found that a lot of the old queens that were in that old colony were getting killed or superseded following sort of the melee of making the nuke. And so because of that, the way we do it now is even more chaotic, where we're busting the whole hive up, we're evening everything out. Probably half the queens end up in the grass anyway. And of the other half, I bet you not more than 15% survive. So.
Can you make sure your questions?
I'm sorry. So the question was, how do we requeen?
On those nukes, are you splitting 50-50 or are you making up multiple nukes?
Yes and yes, kind of depending on, it's up to the beekeeper that's working the colony. But we would like to have a frame of eggs and 2 frames of brood. And so if there's a colony, oftentimes you can split a colony 3 ways coming out of California.
So those queen cells those queen cells you're putting in those hives, what are you made with? The bees that you got in the hive, I mean, have you got Africans in Texas?
I'm sure that we do. But I think so when our queens are mating, they're in a yard with probably 300 to 500 colonies. And so I'm guessing that most of the mating is done with our own drones. It's probably been, I call a hot hive, like we drive into a yard and there's bees hitting the windshield and there's a hot hive from that, what I call a hot hive, think Africanized or whatever, a mean bees in that yard. I don't think we've had any I don't think I've been into a yard in at least 4 years where we've had that, but the way we used to handle that is, we would go and, we would pop lids till we found it, you pop lids until you pop that lid where all the bees come out and cover you. And then we just take a little torch and light a fire underneath the whole pallet. And then stand there with a fire extinguisher so that the rancher or farmer doesn't kick us off their land.
When you're requeening, do you put any kind of a protection on that queen cell?
We do. We put a cell protector on there.
And that will keep it so that by the time she hatches, they've.
Right. A good point. Thank you for the question was, do we put a cell protector on the queen cells that we put in? And the answer is yes. So we hope to at least give her a fighting chance, a chance to hatch. And,
And it's working out because what you're saying is that when that virgin is not accepted, that's usually correlated with it's a better than average queen left in the box. And so it works itself out.
yeah, that's my guess. I mean, I know, again, what I know are the numbers that we have, and I know that, again, the way we came on that is kind of saying, hey, so we go in and we pinch all these queens, and we actually ended up with more queenless colonies. And then we realized that, I mean, just the time and the effort was not benefiting us whatsoever. So we quit doing it. And again, please, this is Sweet River's way of doing things. It's probably would be fair to call us, poor beekeepers, but but I share it with you because it's what we do and it's what works for us.
Well, no, I think it's good because a lot of times, for 80% less effort, you can still get 80% of the results. Not perfect, but like you said in your first slide about, maximizing you're minimizing your inputs and maximizing your exports. You're taking the practical middle ground.
Yeah, don't spend, like you said, 80-20. It works.
You raising your own queen cells, or do you buy it from the guy that
No, we buy them.
the local?
Yeah, the ones that we get in Texas come from Lamb's Honey Farm. And I don't know,
They don't ship queen cells, man.
they haven't in the past, but I think there was a Megan Mahoney, I think, has authored Sam's shaking his head, so he can tell you a lot more detail about this because this is his area of expertise, but I don't know, Sam, if you want to take this, but.
Very few people who ship queen cells. Yes, but it's getting more popular. Vixens out of Florida, alone, they raise about 80,000 queen cells a year and ship them all over the country. But more and more people are doing it. It's a fraction of the price of a native queen, and it's pretty cool genetics that thing too.
So the question
So much easier.
was about, queen cells being shipped. And so the answer is that it's becoming more and more common. There's some best practices, right, or kind of standard best practices that are being written up that I think a few more breeders are using. We get about 8,000 cells a year from Nixa in Florida. And we've had, we like them, or we wouldn't be getting that many from them. And then we get, maybe 10,000 or so from Lambs. The way that we, if it's of any interest, the way that we got it from Lambs in the past was, I don't know, a certain size of igloo cooler was like perfect for the size of a frame. And then they put a little incubator in there and drill a hole in the side of it. And then we hired a guy that would go get them and, plug them in his car and then bring them to us. We would get 2 days of cells at a time because they were in the incubator. We could get 10-day and 11-day cells. And, or I guess it'd be 9 and 10-day cells, but anyway, it worked out really good for us. And this is sort of a side note on cells, but the way I was introduced to cells by, really smart beekeepers, and they would always look at the cells that were really long. They're like, oh, that's a beautiful queen cell. And you get a little short one and they say, oh, that's never going to be a queen. And so, so we had some cells we got always were really long and some were sort of a mix. And one day I thought, sometimes I would put 2 cells in, like if there was one really short stubby one, and I thought, oh, it must not be any good. That's what everybody's always told me. And so being the sort of, curious guy. So one day I just left about, 3 frames worth of cells in an incubator. And I was like, okay, half of these are short and half of these are long. Let's see what happens. I mean, the next morning, I guarantee you 98% of those were hatched. I mean, whether they were stubby cells or long cells. And again, there's people here that know a whole lot more about it and the science behind it, but that's just my, experience on sort of a, somewhat of a bigger scale. So then we started trusting those study cells a little bit better.
So stuff I've read about queen cells, the shipping makes me kind of wonder about jostling them and stuff while they're in that critical development stage before they're hatching. Notice the problem with that.
So the question was about jostling the queen cells during the shipping, and I think again, I'm going to defer the question because I'm not the expert on that, but I can tell you anecdotally, I think we have very good luck with the cells that have been shipped in. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you want to answer the question a little bit more, I'm happy to. Okay, stay for tomorrow. So that we can learn more about cells. Unfortunately, I won't get to be here to hear that, but I would love to. So. Any other questions? Well, thanks again for your time. Thanks for your generosity and having us here and spending part of your afternoon. And I feel especially lucky to given the second time around, I thought maybe the room would be empty and I could just kind of skip to the thank you slide. But nevertheless, I appreciate being here. I really enjoyed getting to meet y'all.
Thank you, Matt. That kind of concludes our conference for today. The next little spot that we have open for about 30 minutes, just kind of a question and answer. If you've got a question and you want to answer, we've got Matt here, we got Sam in the back, we've got a lot of expert beekeepers in the room. If you've got a question, let's throw it out there and let's see if we can find you an answer. If we don't have any, then we'll just break for our dinner tonight and we'll see you tomorrow.
Oh,
okay, go ahead.
I would consider myself, I guess, kind of that halfway to the sideline. We got about 50 colonies, so we're working to expand and build to eventually the 300 to 400 or 500 range is kind of our goal. Something's manageable. So buying equipment is, I guess, my biggest question for anybody who's a commercial beekeeper. Where are you buying your boxes? What kind of price point are you seeing on your boxes? That's the best boxes you're seeing, because it's a pretty big investment. Like you said, you buy something that's a little better equipment, it lasts a little longer, but I guess everybody, somebody runs 3,000, 20,000. What are you seeing? What's the best price on that type of stuff?
One thing about equipment is you don't know what you got until you got it. It's usually about five years down the road. Maybe somebody else has got some opinions, but check a different couple vendors, see what they have, get a few samples, test them out, and go from there. You get what you paid for it. Obviously, you don't want to pay top dollar for bottom grade. I don't know if we bought a lot of stuff from Manway. We bought a lot of stuff from Western Bee, a lot of stuff from Dadant. For the most part, I've been happy with some of that stuff. Some of the odd stuff that I've tried from different vendors who are not saying they're bad, because I had Rob Bliss there earlier. I love the stuff that he made. I can't find anything. But it's more of the smaller ones that I found that I didn't have success with. Price points, I couldn't tell you price points right now. Last year we were about $11 a box for a commercial grade box, and now they're about double that now. I don't know if somebody's seen anything in the magazines or not.
The Man Lake catalog is for a commercial deep is $20.
So they're about $20 now.
Yeah.
So that price of materials has gone through the roof. I know there's some beekeepers. They've invested in equipment to make their own. Homemade doesn't have to be cheap made. It's the quality wood that you buy. Do you use paint? Do you do dippings? Everybody's kind of got an opinion out there. When it comes to that equipment and how to do it, find out what works for you. Risk management, you talked about, is it worth the risk of painting them or just leave them out? If it's, that's where you have to draw that line yourself. We painted our stuff and I went to Home Depot and bought top dollar paint, guaranteed for life, and it's flaking off. I called them and says, hey, I bought this paint, I got the receipt, where's my warranty? Well, we can't prove how you put it on. But was your wood dirty, so now it's flaking off? So there was always a back door. It's trying to find what works for you. One of the latest paints, it's not really a paint, it's a stain that we've been using from K-Wall. It's a 20-year stain, and they tint it for us. You don't get the per se coverage of thickness of paint, but it's enough to protect that wood. And we've been using that for what, last 5-6 years, Dad? And I have not seen any issues with that. We've been really impressed. It is pricey. A 5 gallon, what was the 5 gallon bucket that, Dad? 200? 150?
220,
How much?
280.
280 for a 5 gallon bucket. It's pricey, but we've had these for 5 years. We haven't repainted them. The paint's still sticking out pretty good. We've been happy with that. So, question here.
On those three that you mentioned, Data, Man Lake, and Western Beach, is there a difference or also? Like whoever's got it on sale that week, or is it, are there differences in terms of?
I haven't noticed a lot of difference between those three suppliers.
You'll always find that the more you buy at one time, the better price you get. If you're buying five boxes at a time, they're not gonna be as good a price as if you buy 500.
Okay, the quality you buy or the quantity you buy depends on your price too. One thing I liked about Man Lake is they usually ship for free. Yeah, I paid a little bit more for it, but it seems like the shipping kind of covered it. So I was kind of a fan. Richard?
So what you talk about, the quantity is a big deal, so maybe you want to find a couple other guys that are also sideliners that look at line orders. So you buy
Yeah.
There's They also offer deals in associations. So if you got a local association, you all want to buy together.
Yeah, grouping up, getting a better price on volume is a good way to go.
What all of them have to be, so what the bigger thing is how big a box they are and those kind of things. That matters probably as much as it.
Yeah, and the sad thing is you never know what you got for 5 years. Like I said, we got boxes that I've seen from 1995 that are great boxes. I don't even know where we bought those ones from at this point, because we bought from so many different vendors. It's hard to remember, but if I could remember where I bought that box in 1995 or Dad bought that box in 1995 from, I would go back to that vendor and try to get the same one. I know we've got boxes that we've gone through putting screws into all our boxes now. In the old days, we used to use hammer and nail. We're still finding some of those hammer and nail boxes out there that we are now recycling out. You pick them up, they fall apart, they don't have a choice but to replace. But those were good boxes, they've lasted that long. Richard?
Glue as well now.
I love glue. I will not put anything together without glue. I had an example where I actually bought some equipment. They didn't use glue, and I'm still fighting it today because you pick something up, the nails come out, but yet the board's still stuck to the ground. It's kind of frustrating.
Nails anymore.
But yes, I recommend glue on everything. If you wanted to take it apart in the future, don't use glue, but you've got about a year or two is all you got. And it'll come apart by itself.
And what kind of glue do you use? Use a waterproof glue?
The glue I've tried to get a couple different glues. I've used liquid nail. I've been really impressed with that. You pay more money for it. It does not go as far. Using Elmer's wood glue that you can buy at Lowe's, Home Depot, the exterior glue. I've actually
Tight bond too.
pretty good success with that.
Tight bond too.
Tight bond, yeah. And 3, I mean, there's a couple different. I think as long as you use some kind of glue, it's better than using no glue at all.
Including the frames.
The frames too, yeah, everything that you put wood together. Michael in the back, you got a question? Okay, I was resting on my shoulder, but this will hopefully be better. Next question back here.
Has anyone used the eco wood treatment for a long period of time? I've used it, it's easy. You can dip it, you can roll it on, whatever you want to do, but.
The question about eco wood treatment. Who's used it? Some people have. I don't know, has anybody used that in here?
It's just, you just mix it up, comes in a packet, and you can buy it on Amazon, you can buy it from them, and you dip it, supposedly one time, good forever. It's called eco wood treatment. Yes.
Eco, yeah. I've seen some stuff on that online, some of the commercial forums that I've followed. I've seen them talk about that. Some of those guys really swear by it. I have not tried that. It's something that I've been looking at because repainting a box after 5 years with my paint's coming off, I don't like. I mean, that's a personal preference. And I got a lot of boxes out there that needs to be painted, but I just don't have time to get to them. It will be when we get to that point. So.
Any thoughts on plastic boxes?
Plastic, I tend to stay with plastic, especially plastic frames. I haven't had plastic boxes per se, but the strength and the stability I have not found in the plastic. Some people might differ in their opinion, but I stay away from the plastic.
Dipping, I'm interested in people who have been dipping for a while, like I know it's become popular.
The wax.
The wax dipping on the woodenware, and I just wonder if it's really lasting. I know probably back, east where it's a lot higher humidity, it maybe makes more sense. But if anyone out here dipping and has for a while, and I'd like to hear what they're finding.
I've seen some of that done. I've bought some material that was wax dipped. I didn't really like it because in the heat where I'm at, it's like it just melted off and everything stuck to the bottom of my pallet. So when I was moving hives, I had not just small rocks, but large rocks actually stuck to them. So I wasn't a fan in my area with that.
I worked in someone else's yard, and I did not like working with them because it's hot. You get wax on it, it's wax. But I'm just wondering if anyone has done it for a long time and what they think.
Wax dipping, yeah.
I know that-
Michael, wax dipping.
I know that cleavers do, and they love it. They do it every year. They dip them. They really enjoy it, but they run in like Miller County and then up in South Dakota, so they don't deal with the heat.
I think when you wax, that used to wax do stuff like that.
But they,
Residual wax, it sucks right into the wood.
Yeah, this was these guys had bought these, and then so I don't know how well they were dipped, but you could that's when it was hot, you could feel the wax. It wasn't like it was.
When the process,
Everything was kind of waxed on. You did a propolis, you covered with wax at the end of the day.
Jared, you got 3 questions on the board.
Couple questions online here.
Starting with thank you, Mac.
I harvest my honey, then triple filter it. Someone told me that it's not raw honey. What do you think?
Carol answered that.
There you go, Mike.
I got the official word from Joey Caputo. So it is technically still raw, but you cannot label it raw just because of the labeling laws. You can't label it raw anyway, so you just have to be careful not to label it as raw.
About that question.
Honey triple filter.
I mean, what's the point of triple filtering if you want to have raw honey? Like, I mean, what's the point of trying
Okay.
to both?
Becky, here's a question for you. What is the advantage of triple filtering it if you want it raw? If you can answer that one.
Because we don't like the wax
What are you
pieces.
filtering it through?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? This is Becky.
She says she doesn't like the wax.
The wax pieces. If you let your honey sit for a while, those wax pieces will rise to the top. You can skin them off.
No, so that.
I guess it's all kind of a personal preference. I've had people ask, I want to hide straight from the hive. And I said, well, straight from the hive, that's kind of what we do. She goes, I don't, I want the beeswax in there, I want the bees in there. And I just like, okay, to each their own. I'm like, I'm gonna have to charge you extra for that because I'll have to do less work. And she's like, I'll pay you whatever. So if you, it's meeting those customers' needs. Let's see, another question up here. Yesterday I watched a video where someone had a mouse guard on and the bees were going through the holes. Does that help with burrow bites? Like knocking them off with the bee?
No.
I would probably say no. It could help from time to time if the bee rubs up against there, but I haven't seen anything like that work before.
Beekeeper makes a product that looks kind of like a pollen, the little
A
hole.
pollen trap.
Yeah, and it's treated with miticide. The bees get treated, so maybe that's what they're thinking about.
Yeah, there was a trick around there, the bees were going across that, and it was, if I didn't know, doing a mic drop count, when you put those on, that would be a good way to tell. But unless you're catching those some way and finding out if it's working, that's the only way to really know.
I mean, a mic can hold on to a bee like nothing. I don't think it's gonna casually get bumped off by going through any little opening.
Yeah, like I said, that'd be a good experiment to find out about. When the weather was warm the last few weeks, my bees were flying. Now that the weather has turned super cold again, will they recluster? Yes, the bees know what they're doing. They will recluster. They're going to take care of whatever brood is in the hive. If they start laying eggs, they will cluster on that brood to make sure that it's taken care of. Any questions more questions in here? Anybody?
Oh, I'm a hobbyist. I've done a split hives a couple of ways. When I get lazy, I just like take one box and send it here, take the other box over there, put new boxes on it and check them in a little bit to see which one has eggs. I've also gone through and looked for queen and each of those frames. Does it matter?
I think that goes, the question about splitting hives. How do you split hives? Can you just move frames, flip the frames? Is that how you split them? The question, my answer is, what works for you is the best way. We've done that both ways. We split hives in half, one half here, one half there. We split hives in threes, we split hives in fours. We've done the queen excluder push. It all kind of depends on what you have the time to do and how you manage your hives. If you're doing 20,000 hives, obviously you're going to do it differently than doing work 2 hives. I know when I expanded my bees from 80 hives to 180 hives, I started managing my hives differently. What do I have time to do? Do I have time to look for the queen? I don't. I don't care where she's at. I'll find her when I need to kill her. Now, obviously, if she's laying bad, that's when I'm going to kill her. If she's laying good, I'm going to let her keep doing her thing. The hive next to it, if that queen's not laying, I want to know why. Has it been my 30 days since I split that hive? If it has, I need to know what's going on. That's the hive I need to be checking. The hive that's going good, I'm going to leave alone. But that's my way of doing it. So figure out what works for you, what you have time for, and run with that. When you feel like that's not working, try something new. Any more questions? Any more online here?
Yeah, well, I was trouble figuring out the timing for the bar achievements later in the season, because it seems like I do get a sometimes pretty decent fall flow. So I just can't seem to find enough time to leave it on for long enough before it gets too cold for me to be able to take it off, because it's like way in there, it's really cold outside. I'm in this area, so whatever, whether we talk time or other things, we have tips on that.
Okay, so tips on apple bar treatments in the fall. When's a good time to do those?
I just think give up the fall.
Okay, don't bother.
If you're getting all your mics through, all your hives through the winter, then it's probably okay. If you're 20% or 40%, then it's way the cost of replacing those columns. I I stopped doing fall, started my first serious treatment, whether it's after or something else, in end of July, beginning of August.
Yeah.
And then getting again the oxalic acid looked at the food list. I'm getting 95% or better survival.
Okay,
And that's worth a lot more to me than the honey that I was getting in the fall.
but then if you, so I do that late July or August treatment, but then the last couple of years I've had some problem with cats, being laid on. I was worried about waiting until later to do the OA treatments when they're through this. That,
If your treatment is good in August, then usually won't build up, at least in my experience, won't build up too high before you get to the disease. But you gotta check, sometimes your treatment didn't work.
yeah.
Then you gotta do, formic acid or whatever, throw it in there.
Any other questions? Wait,
Just a curiosity.
I like it, sir, but it's all filled up.
Average pound per hive production in Utah. And I realize it's gonna vary from south to north to.
yeah,
yard to yard.
so the question is, average pounds of honey per hive in Utah. It's all, yeah,
It's probably all.
that's a hard one, because it is muscle map, it depends on the year, it depends on your location, depends on if you got hit with spray. Joey's got the answer here in the back.
You know, boil water.
28 pounds per hive. So
That seems a little low.
that seems low, but you gotta realize where to get the information from is those who are reporting it. Now, if you're making 100 pounds of hive, you probably don't have time to fill out that survey to send it in to raise that number. So it's all on what's reported. But it seemed like years ago, I heard it was around 36. That's kind of always the average I've gone off of, but like I said, it depends on the year, rain, drought.
Did people notice a big difference this last year?
I've heard rumors that everybody in Utah had a pretty good year. I felt like we had a good year last year. In fact, I say we probably had our best year last year we've ever had. The year before, I didn't feel quite that way. The year before that, I felt that way again. And I always try to look back, what did I do different? And yeah, we did a couple things differently. We made splits at different times. We moved beats at different times, but the weather had a different cycle. We had a wetter summer, so I think that helped. With my treatments, were they effective? Because I didn't spend a whole lot of time checking my mic drops, I don't really have an answer for that. But what I do know is I had a great year last year, and I'm grateful for what I did have. And hopefully this next year I learned something, and I'm going to try to do what I did this last year, this year, so I have another good year. Any more questions? Okay, oh, one more.
For the commercial guys, W kit clips or U clips? You just want to start a fight. No, I don't want, that's true. Just quick show of hands.
So high clips versus U clips on your pallets.
On the high clips, U style where you're right together, or W where you got that little 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch space.
Depends on how you're tying them down with your platform.
So just give me a raise your hand. So W clip people, raise your hand. U clip people, raise your hand. Okay,
So it looks like we got more U clips and W clips in the room.
I'm curious what your justification was for using W versus U.
I don't have a horse in the race.
You just want to know?
I just like the idea of them being a little bit apart. The guys that I'm going in with in California are U clips, and I just thought, oh, okay, well, why? Well, we've always used U clips.
Michael has a good comment here in the back on W clips versus white clips.
It's a really good comment. Coming out of the south, which Matt probably knows better, the U clips, because the hives sit right next to each other, the ants climb in between, burrow in between the hives, and that's where they colonize between hives. So they use the W clips so they are separated, so that the ants won't colonize in between the hives. because of Euclid's, I see a lot of dry rot. So the number of Euclid's keep the hives caught.
Okay, so for those online, I'm just gonna repeat your answer there, Michael. The W clips, to keep the airflow between the hives, to keep pests and pestilence out from in between. U clips to keep them tight. There's pros and cons to both of those. I run the U clips myself. I think they're really good until a rot gets in between the two hives or something and you can't get it out. So maybe the W clips might be more effective on that way, keep them cleaned out in between there.
So what's the downside of the U clip? I mean, of the W clip? What's the downside if you strap your flatbed front to back, boxes will slide? So, gotcha. Keep strapping them side to side.
So just the strapping.
Thank you, that was the answer I was looking for.
So it's kind of what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Michael?
One other thing with that is that if you have the U clips, your chances of getting stuck on the California border are a lot higher.
The U clip?
If you have a U clip. Just because they're looking for specifically the fire ants. So if you're coming from the south, like Matt has fire ants a lot. If you have some clips, chances of getting stopped and having to wash it. I don't deal with these a lot, but chances of coming out of the south and having to wash it are a lot higher.
So inspections make it different for coming from state to state. Okay, we're gonna wrap the meeting up for now. We will be having our convention dinner in here at 6 o'clock. So for those of you that signed up for that, we'll see you at 6 o'clock. Everybody else, we'll see you at 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
I saw it I've seen it for years. It's a two high. It's like a